Happy Sunday morning, everybody. We are live in week 7, the bipocalypse, the bomb cyclone, Darren Waller game time decision. Everything's falling apart around us. And that's why we have Dr. Gene to top this off. Sigmund Bloom here. Thanks, everybody, for coming out on a Sunday morning here to our wonderful Sunday morning powwow. And Gene, let's start with Darren Waller because this is an afternoon start, a 4 p.m. Eastern slot start. So we're going to maybe have to make a decision about Waller before we know his status.
Yeah, that's true. And I think we have some idea of what his status is. It's just too much going on in the last 24 hours to expect that he is close to being fully healthy and that he is capable of doing everything he would ordinarily do in a game. It was the injury report all week was a little bit weird with Waller. It just, he's listed as not injured, resting player, but also had a knee condition. He did miss a few snaps last week. I didn't really put too much stock in it because Las Vegas didn't seem to give us any indication. Then he was back fully practicing on Thursday, and I even dismissed the ankle addition to the injury report on Saturday morning, because they threw it at the end of resting player, knee, ankle. It didn't seem to be that much of a concern at all until we got the report from that he was added to the list as questionable. And Adam Schefter this morning says it's kind of a inside ankle heel situation where he got twisted up with another player on Saturday. And that's more than a low ankle sprain, right? So, not saying it's a high ankle sprain. There's not enough information to say that necessarily, but this is kind of how these non-low ankle sprains go, where you just don't know what you're going to get 24 hours later. Sounds like his Saturday evaluation was a little bit worse than expected, and he isn't still feeling great. So it's hard to say whether or not he'll be active, but I think we can pretty comfortably say that, even in this matchup that everybody was expecting to be a double-digit target kind of breakout situation for Waller after a few little bit slower weeks than expected in a row. I don't know how that you can expect that at this point. It looks like it's going to be a struggle for him to get through the game without any issue. And then maybe he's another one of these players that we see time and time again who have few targets, but high leverage situations that somehow end up being successful anyway. But I don't think we're going to see 8 to 10 plus targets. Wouldn't necessarily expect to see Waller moving up and down the field based on the type of the injury that what Schefter suggested this morning. So, there being so many players out and bye week and so relatively few tight end options as it is, it's hard to know whether or not Waller is going to be a good option for your lineup or not, especially if you're in a flex situation. So I'll let you go through some of those issues later, but I would assume that fewer targets than usual and a little bit of a lower floor than you would normally expect from Waller at best. And then it's entirely possible that he's not active at all, but
right.
I don't know that we can go there yet.
Yeah, well, the problem with, and that is an important piece of information too, because Foster Moreau, I like Foster Moreau. In all of my tight end premium dynasty leagues, I've had Foster Moreau on my roster for like 2 years. I think Foster Moreau is eventually going to be a breakout player. And this could be, in fact, in your tight end premium dynasties, I would pick him up this morning just because he could easily have like a 7 for 100 and a 2 touchdowns game and then go back on the shelf for Waller. But knowing that eventually second contract or whatever, he's going to be fantasy relevant. But if Waller's active, now you're not really having clarity between the two of them. I would say this real quick, and after we let Dr. Gene go, I'll answer as many start sit questions as I can. Chris Allen's on assignment today, but certainly in the early games, you have someone like Ricky Seals-Jones. You have someone that's reasonably expected to get 3 or 4 catches. You're going to play him over Waller or Moreau and not wait around, because it could end up being the worst possible scenario where you don't feel comfortable playing any Raiders tight end. Okay, that's obviously the big headline this morning, Dr. Gene. We had to have a couple more. I mean, there's a whole, let's just say Giants wide receivers. Go.
I think the only one that we can reasonably count on is Darius Slayton, strangely enough. Looks like he was probably close to playing last week, and they decided to give him another week off. He's been through a pretty good week of limited practice. Everybody seems to be optimistic, including the beat writers on Evan Ingram, but that little bit of practice video that we saw looked like he wanted to mess around on that leg at all. So, maybe it's enough where he can move around a little bit and have a decent PPR day in terms of the number of catches he may get, but I don't see him being a dynamic enough player to be successful and productive in a huge way. I was a little bit disappointed to read that Sterling Shepard was a little bit more of a game time decision than it looked like he was going to be, although there was some Joe Judge was a little bit weird this week. The initial word was that Shepard was a little bit more of a game time decision and that it was more of a setback than just whatever. And then Joe Judge was calling everybody kind of nicks and bumps and bruises. And we have to put everybody on the injury report and there's not much to worry about. So this definitely looks like a little bit more of a setback than just a little bit of tightness that Shepard experienced on Thursday afternoon. So being called a game time decision, tightness, concern, all the the trend sounded a little bit better on Friday, but it wouldn't be surprising if he was inactive and you wouldn't necessarily trust him to be an important part of the offense. John Ross should be available to play, but Kadarius Toney not going to be available. Kenny Galladay is at least a week away still too.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. Because I think we can do this in a somewhat quick way before I send you on your way, I'm going to ask you about some of the other players that aren't going to play today. But another thing, it's bipocalypse. So some people are maybe having to choose between which injured player do I hold and which one do I drop so I can field a full lineup. Because I don't think there's anything else. I guess I'll ask you this. If someone said Collins or Penny, like if I get a answer question here, Alex Collins or Rashad Penny, well, and none of the above is not a choice.
Yeah,
Well,
today or in the longer term.
Today,
Today, I
tomorrow.
think it probably
tomorrow.
has to be correct tomorrow night. I think to answer the question, who you put in your lineup this weekend, I think it's going to be Collins. Pete Carroll was reassuring enough Saturday after their practice to suggest that we plan to rest Alex Collins all along. He's going to play. We're not too concerned about him. But DJ Dallas has looked a little bit better. Rashad Penny is very probably going to be in the mix. I don't know that we're a one-to-one committee situation here, but I don't think Alex Collins is necessarily going to be a 12 to 15 touch player, both coming off the issues that he's had, hip, glute, groin, whatever, and Penny being back in the mix a little bit. But I think that's going to be very much a committee and a hot hand situation moving forward. That's the way Pete Carroll has gone when he hasn't had a player that he's trusted. And Alex Collins has had 2 or 3 weeks already, slowed by injury or otherwise, to establish himself as the primary lead back there and has done an okay job, but clearly hasn't done so much where Carroll hasn't said, but he essentially called him a committee player yesterday. So, but he's going to play. So in terms of, Collins has been in the mix for a month. Penny hasn't been for almost 3 months now consistently. So I think it's Collins over Penny this weekend. And then we sort of see how everybody else progresses from there.
Okay, so let's step through these really quick, Doc. And by the way, folks, Dr. Gene's content, your Monday injury rounds, your midweek injury rounds, your Saturday, Sunday update, part of your Footballguys subscription. Of course, you can also hear him on the Waiver Wire show that we do Tuesday mornings. Thursday night during the live shows, we check in on injuries. And then on Sunday mornings, he's so kind to give us his time. Or I'll give you another one real quick, Doc. Should we treat Antonio Gibson differently than we would have, say, 3 weeks ago when we're setting our lineup?
Yes, although Adam Schefter this morning was interesting. So what he tweeted, if you didn't go through to the full 5 paragraph report that he posted on ESPN, you'd miss some pretty good tidbits. So inside this tweet didn't say anything about the nature of the injury for Darren Waller, but had you clicked through, you got a little bit more detail there. And the same thing goes with Antonio Gibson, where Schefter seems to be implying this morning that there's 2 different shin situations going on, and that actually the longer term shin stress fracture response situation that he's had since the preseason may actually be looking better and less of an issue and less limiting than we thought it was after how he came out of the game last week, and that it's actually a bruise in the shin area, which is what Schefter, the terms that he used, that isn't may still be an issue this week, but it's not. The way he's writing the report implies that it's not related to the thing that was going on before, which is a good long-term situation for Gibson, or at least it means that we're not yet in that snap to snap, series to series situation where he could have any number of reasons to come out because of the stress response and still a season threatening situation. So that's still in the background, but that appears to maybe be going a little bit better than we expected, which makes sense if you look at his snap counts. He was getting 15 to 20 touches pretty consistently and 60 to 65% of the snaps, and that did not happen last week. So I think that's good news. This week, however, whatever was going on last week, according to Schefter, is still a little bit of an issue. So I think there's reason to believe that Gibson may not be able to get to that 15 plus touch and carry situation, and that we could see a little bit more Jarrett Patterson. And depending on how this week goes, we're 1 week closer to Washington's bye, which is coming up soon, and then hopefully on the other side of that, especially if Schefter's correct that the shin fracture is feeling better, he may be in a pretty good spot for the rest of the season. But we'll see how that goes. For this week, I think I temper expectations a little bit, but I think there's still a lot of upside in play.
And it's a game against Green Bay at Lambeau. So it sounds like what we have the precursor for is if Gibson looks okay but doesn't play much because of the game script, maybe you get a trade-off out there for him because maybe things are going to be better. But for at least for this week, JD, because it could be like the fantasy football Bitcoin, but maybe not for the rest of the year. We'll see. I don't know. Okay, real quick, because I'm just going to try to serve these up to you in ways that, you can just spike it like a volleyball, all right? Saquon Barkley, better or worse than 50-50 chance he plays next week?
Better.
Okay.
If only because they didn't put him on injured reserve. I'm a little bit nervous that he hasn't been back to practice yet, and I didn't like how severe the mechanism of that injury was, but I'd say better than 50-50, but
Yeah.
let's 55-45. I mean, I'm not
Right.
confident in that, but I'm not ruling him out for next week already.
Yeah, and 2 years ago when he had that high ankle sprain, he came back before he should have. Like, I just think that Barkley looks like one of these guys that, I'm not saying it's going to be like a Christian McCaffrey situation where it's a setback, but I think we're always going to be thinking Barkley's going to absolutely be selling to the coaches to get out there as soon as he possibly can.
And this is low ankle; it's not high ankle. It's
right.
a pretty significant injury where those ligament, in terms of grades, this is going to be a middle grade injury because they weren't torn and requiring surgery. This is a fairly high grade, mid grade injury, if that makes sense. So it's not surprising that he's missed that much time, and he may still be dealing with enough instability in the ankle that it could be a week or two. But these injuries are a little bit easier to support than high ankle injuries with taping and bracing and that sort of stuff. So if he's got decent range of motion and some explosion, then I think you'll see him out there if for no other reason than the Giants really don't have anything else on their depth chart that compares to Barkley, even at a little bit less than full strength situation.
Okay, so let's just stick with the 50-50 outlook for next week, and we can say you can say 50-50 or just say Antonio Brown.
I need to go back and review that and see if I can find a moment of injury on the tape. I would say better than 50-50 for him right now.
And then his teammate Gronkowski.
Better than 50-50. He's close. He looked like he was running pretty hard in practice, and I think they're working on getting his conditioning back more than anything else.
And Galladay versus Tony, who gets back on the field first?
I don't really know what's going on with Tony. It was really weird because I didn't see too much more on the 3 touches before he left the game last week that suggested that this was a significant situation. So that one is interesting to me. I don't have a good handle on that one. I would, for that reason, I think I would say Galladay has a chance to play this week, and I'm not sure Tony does.
Every week, there's a 100% chance Dr. Gene's going to help you win your league, or at least do the best you can with what you have, because that's what Week 7 is all about in fantasy football. It's what life's all about in a lot of ways. Doc, go back and live your life and do more important things than help us with fantasy football. But that's okay because it's kind of important too.
All right. Good luck, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thanks.
All right. Chris Allen's on assignment, folks. So you get 100% Sigmund Bloom here. And of course, know that I do the full projections at footballguys.com. I will make adjustments when inactives come out. I'll make some other adjustments. For instance, let's start with weather, by the way, and I'll see how much of these questions can bring these things up. But one of the things I want to put out there, folks, I mentioned bomb cyclone earlier. There's a nasty, nasty weather system coming into the West Coast right now. So Indianapolis, San Francisco, the only player among the wide receivers and tight ends that I would play in that game is Deebo Samuel, just because his game kind of matches up with a mud vest. He's a mudder. It's going to be a nasty game, and maybe it would give you a little more inclination to play Jonathan Taylor. Not that you need any inclination to play him. Say Elijah Mitchell, because I would think that this is not going to be a passing game night in Indianapolis. All right. I'm going to just step through these and get through as many as I can, and also, of course, try to make it relevant for everybody. Let's start at the top. So the earlier you get here, folks, and get your question in the chat, the earlier, the more likely I'll get it. Mari, I'm on Ross St. Brown or Tyler Johnson. Good morning, y'all. Good morning, Rubio. Hey, I'm a big Tyler Johnson guy today. Tyler Johnson is a player. Tyler Johnson is only not producing because, well, he's behind the best wide receiver trio in the league. So I think Tyler Johnson is a big upside play today. Amon-Ra St. Brown should get at least 5 or 6 catches, so he's a safe play in PPR leagues to get you a 8, 9, 10 point outcome. But I think that's the blow up potential of Tyler Johnson. Shouldn't be on your bench. I have a feeling most Tyler Johnson questions I'm going to get today, I'm going to go ahead and say Tyler Johnson. For instance, Zach Sandaki says, Ramondre Stevenson or Tyler Johnson full PPR. Again, that's Tyler Johnson. Now, that being said, this is a good week, Bipocalypse week, week 7, to look for those backup running backs who will have opportunity potentially in the second half in blowout games, potential blowout wins. So Ramondre Stevenson absolutely applies as the Jets are playing New England. A.J. Dillon is maybe at the top of this list as Green Bay is playing Washington. Sony Michel becomes interesting here as the Rams play Detroit. So you can see the backup running backs that have to be lined up with good matchups this week. If you need a running back 2 or a flex in a pinch, these are guys you might want to look at. I probably would rank them because Stevenson was getting involved in the passing game last week too. I probably rank them Dillon, Stevenson, and then Michelle. And if I can think of any others, I'll add that to the mix. All right, folks. I am Ian's Cat. What's up, man? David Carr. No, well, David Carr would be interesting out there. Derek Carr with Waller out. And again, Waller may or may not play. Or Jameis Winston. So Winston, by the way, want to report here that Deontay Harris is going to be out for this one. So this is potentially a game where you're going to see Marquez Callaway. So I haven't gotten to any Marquez Callaway questions yet, but this is potentially a big Marquez Callaway game here. But it's also a game without much. Traquan Smith may or may not play. It's Seattle. This is a team that wants to throw the ball to Saints only 20 or 25 times a game anyway. So it could be a low volume game for Winston. So I'm probably just going to stick with Carr here just because I think now, no, folks, that the Saints are about to embark on a part of their schedule that they're going to need Jameis Winston. Okay, I just want to go over this again because I went over it once this week. But I want you to know, folks, coming up after this week for the Saints, Tampa, Atlanta, Tennessee, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Dallas. Those are games that sure sound to me like they may not be able to just get away with only 25 or 20 attempts for Jameis Winston. But this week, I'm Ian's Cat. I would say that is Derek Carr. All right. John Smith, full PPR, Tyler Boyd, Chase Edmonds, or James Conner pick 2. I'm going with the Arizona combo here because, first of all, Tyler Boyd hasn't been doing much as it is. Great showdown with Baltimore today. When all 3 wide receivers are healthy, it's a balanced offense. Only if the Bengals fall behind, which is possible. Ravens defense actually played pretty well last week. So those things kind of counteract each other. But I'm going with the Arizona running backs. Come on. Arizona this week. This is I don't want to say it's Houston. So this is another example where the matchup makes both running backs very viable. Probably Conner over Edmonds just because of the multi-touchdown potential that we've already seen a few times. Anthony DiNapoli coming in with 3 to start out of Mitchell, Stevenson, Collins, Gaskin, and Khalil Herbert. So look, the Bears, Damien Williams is activated off of COVID. I believe he's going to play. It's Tampa. If you're going to play a Chicago back, I think it's probably Damien Williams just because he has more passing game prowess than Herbert. Herbert looked really good last week, but his value might be dwindling now with Williams back, San Francisco, Pittsburgh coming up, and then the bye. David Montgomery will be back. So we can eliminate him. And I think we're going to eliminate Gaskin. It's a fascinating matchup with Atlanta. I mean, hey, if you're going to throw someone in, why not? But he doesn't have a lot of chemistry in the passing game. We saw Gaskin's blow-up game happen with Jacoby Brissett. So there's not a lot of passing game chemistry there between Gaskin and Tua Tagovailoa. It's a good matchup, but I think you're still probably going to go. Let me go through this in terms of confidence. You're going to play Elijah Mitchell just because, as far as I know, he's still the lead back. And again, it's going to be a mud fest, a slop fest of rain and wind in Santa Clara. Stevenson we talked about, so he's the second one. And it comes down to Collins or Gaskin. Maybe if it was a PPR league, I might be more inclined to say, why not Gaskin? Not knowing that, I'm still going to go with Collins as Dr. Gene laid out. It was kind of the plan, I think, that Collins was going to get slowly ramped up to this one. Mark B, good morning. We got this. 2 out of Collins, Miles Gaskin, Williams, Stevenson. vomit. Yeah, everybody's feeling that way this week. So don't worry. Don't do anything too drastic to make sure that your lineup gets upgraded because you're probably playing somebody else who doesn't have a great time of it. Half PPR. So I think you're going to go with Alex Collins and Ramondre Stevenson here, Mark. And really, this is one of those ones. One of the things I like to do, folks, if you notice, those of you who've tuned in or otherwise ask me questions on Twitter, sometimes I'll add some modifiers to my answer. One modifier is I won't talk you out of the other player, which means it's close enough that, I'm not trying to say it's decisive. Another modifier is I just say, and pray. There's a lot of those this week. So I'm giving you a player to answer or players to answer your question, but I'm also telling you it's going to have to be something, you'd have to really have some good luck for that to hit. All right, moving right along, folks. It's wonderful to join you on a Sunday morning, by the way. As I go through, it's wonderful. It's sometimes taking me a little while to find a question because everyone's so kind and polite here. Mine's Cat comes in again with a Ridley or Metcalf as a flex for Bateman. Bateman's interesting, but more interesting in a PPR. We're going to watch him. One of the things people need to remember about Bateman is he actually tied for the team lead in targets last week in his first game back. So Bateman's interesting. Ridley's interesting too. He says standard, which tells me I would read his non-PPR. So I'm just going to go with Metcalf and hope for a touchdown tomorrow night because Ridley is more of a possession receiver at this point. Patrick Rasmussen, Godwin or Cordero Patterson, half PPR. I'm sorry. Speaking of possession receivers, that's Godwin. I mean, maybe with Antonio Brown out, Godwin plays a more pivotal role in the passing game, more of a downfield role, more of a red zone role. But I'm not going against Cordero Patterson right now. No, he's red hot. I'm not going to put him in. I'm not going to put him on the bench. Godwin goes to the bench. There we are. So we are in week 7 in fantasy football. Cordero Patterson, the start over Chris Godwin. At the Dynasty wants to know wide receiver, my super flex spot. And that's okay, by the way, especially if your super flex is, say, a Carson Wentz or Jimmy Garoppolo because of the weather in that game. Need 2 of the following: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Henry Ruggs, and Tyler Johnson. Whew. Well, I think, again, I love Tyler Johnson today. I'm putting him in. Henry Ruggs, with this Waller situation, actually could be negative because Waller sucks the safeties up into the middle of the field, intermediate zone, which gives Ruggs even more clear sailing for the deep ball. And if Philadelphia is rationally coached, who knows? I would say that Waller being banged up gives you the freedom to go into the game and say the one thing we're not going to have happen is a Henry Ruggs deep ball over our heads. So now that being said, if it's a non-PPR league or a 0.5 PPR league, that makes St. Brown not attractive. And I still would go with Ruggs. However, if it's a PPR league, then take the safe points with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And again, go with Tyler Johnson. Diego has a question here. What's up, Diego? About Michael Thomas. Would he recommend trading him as his potential return years? And I feel like at this point in a dynasty league, you shouldn't trade him because his value is like pennies on the dollar. Try to trade for him. In a redraft league, if you have him, unless you picked him up last week, you've already absorbed the cost of getting to find out what you have when he comes back by holding him through some period of weeks, maybe the whole season. So I feel like trading him right now is giving away that asset you've built up by having him come up there. So I don't know. And I think he meant to say bearish anyway. Rob Monticelli. What's up, Rob? Start Ricky Seals-Jones or Damian Williams in PPR. I'd go with Ricky Seals-Jones. Remember, he's the number 2 receiver, basically, with injuries. It's going to Green Bay. They're going to have to pass a lot. I would go with Williams over Damian. Over Damian Williams. Ricky Seals-Jones over Damian Williams. Eddie Powell. J.D. McKissick or James Conner on PPR. That's got to be Conner because of the touchdowns, even though I like J.D. McKissick a lot in this game. Andy Kerner. Do we think that P. Collins is blowing smoke about Collins? Need to choose between Collins, Penny, Lockett, and Pittman. Pittman is part of that. Pittman's one of those players whose bottom just drops out. I mean, Pittman might have like 6 catches for 40 yards or something like that. But the conditions sound like they're going to be really terrible for the passing game in Santa Clara. So I would eliminate Pittman. Lockett, you hope in this one maybe that even though Seattle's playing at home, that they fall behind. And then you have Lockett getting a chance maybe for some more aggressive downfield passing from Geno Smith. That's probably where I'm going to go because I think between Collins and Penny, Collins might get more work. But again, I don't necessarily expect Seattle to play with the lead in this one. I also expect Alvin Kamara to run a lot, run all over this team. At the Dynasty says Foster Moreau is a beautiful player. Only flaws, he's behind a beast in Waller. I agree. So the scenario we want with Moreau here is that Waller's ruled out. If Waller's ruled out, Moreau's probably a top 6 or 7 tight end play this week. If Moreau's not ruled out, if Waller's not ruled out, Moreau is more like a top 12 to 15 tight end play. All right, moving right along. How's everyone doing out there? I'm behind in the chat, so I don't really know. So if you answer that, just know that I'm not going to be able to actually, reply. Damian Williams or Devontae Freeman? Half PPR, Thomas Widener asks. Folks, the Baltimore backfield, I wish Nick Boyle's back. If Nick Boyle's back, I would be more inclined to break ties in favor of the Baltimore backfield. That being said, Devontae Freeman has shown a little more burst than he did last year when he got in for the Giants. The running game is starting to come around, and you would think that the running game, unlike years past, is not what you go in aiming to stop. If you're Cincinnati, you go in aiming to take away the downfield passing game, with Lamar Jackson really growing up as a passer this year away. Maybe that does open up things for the running game, and the defense and the offensive line are all surging right now. So I'm inclined to go with Devontae Freeman here over Damian Williams as Chicago goes to Tampa Bay. And since we're talking to Chicago, I don't know if I'm going to get questions on this. You might be inclined to break ties in favor of Darnell Mooney, in favor of Allen Robinson, in favor of Justin Fields, in favor of even Cole Kmet, because Tampa is going to make Chicago come out of their shell in this game offensively. It could be something good. It could even be special for Justin Fields if he's in tune with the game and he makes some plays, tapping into that incredible running ability, athleticism, deep ball ability. And he can throw some beautiful improvisational passes. It just doesn't necessarily come naturally to him. Chris Sullivan, Dylan Gaskin or Michael Pittman standard. That's Dylan all the way there. He said he was leaning towards Dylan. Guillotine League. And again, folks, check out Guillotine League's Paul Charchian, friend of the show, mortality in fantasy football every single week. So it makes decisions a little more important. Rick Curson Brock asks about Godwin or Evans or Cooks. 2 out of the 3, Godwin, Evans, and Cooks in a Guillotine League. You got to go with Evans. I know that Evans has a 2-catch floor, but he has a 2-touchdown upside. And Cooks and Evans would be the call here because, again, with Godwin, it's just that role. I'm open to it changing with Antonio Brown, but I also wonder about Tyler Johnson. I hope everyone's enjoying this, by the way, or at least it's useful because I have nobody to check me or slow me down. I can tell my brain is getting ahead of my words, but y'all are very kind. Arthur Ryan, gut pick between Tannehill and Joe Burrow, and this gives me a chance to talk about Julio Jones. Julio Jones is going to play today, and Julio Jones is a big upside play because of the Tennessee-Kansas City matchup. So Tannehill becomes a more interesting play here with Burrow going up against a red hot Baltimore Ravens defense. I'm going to go with Ryan Tannehill. Give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to take a just quick technical commercial break. And we're back. Thank you for your patience. Needed little technical difficulties with the cameraman drinking there. All right, moving right along, folks. And I'll give, I'm not going to be able to get through everything here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a little jump down and see what people are talking about down at the bottom here. Ag Fox asks about Callaway or Johnson. Callaway's tempting. Because Marquez Callaway, again, with Deontay Harris out, with the deep passing game, it only takes 1 to hit there. And at the same time, though, I just like Tyler Johnson that much. I'm going to see if I can find a Tyler Johnson question I would not answer Tyler Johnson to, okay? Citron Physics asks, Chase Edmonds or Josh Jacobs? I'm going with Josh Jacobs here. I continue to be open to the possibility that the Raiders, with John Gruden gone, there's just a spring in their step. We'll see what they do against the Eagles in this one, a great Super Bowl rematch. Kenny King, anybody? I'm going with Josh Jacobs. I think that we may well see that Josh Jacobs is going to fulfill not just the value we thought he might have had going into the season as a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick, but maybe the 3rd round value he had as a rookie, not the 1st round value he had last year in drafts. But if this is a successful team, then that's going to be Josh Jacobs for sure. Jack Lewis asks, Darrell Williams or Leonard Fournette for cash? Isn't always for cash, or at least pride or something. Darrell Williams had those 2 touchdowns last week. Otherwise, not very impressive. Now, if you think that Kansas City is going to be able to run on Tennessee, everyone can run on Tennessee. However, if he doesn't get those touchdowns to finish drives, he's not as interesting. Leonard Fournette also had a 2-touchdown game recently. He's playing Chicago, which is the better defense. Fournette's probably the better player. This one's tough. This one's not easy. I'm probably going to go with Darrell Williams here and just sponge off of that Kansas City offense and know that I think Tampa is going to be content to pass against Chicago if necessary. Shelby Mertens asked again about Elijah Mitchell. I just think he's going to get 15 to 18 carries. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. There was a Monday night game the Steelers and Dolphins played at one point during the Ben Roethlisberger era that was like this, where it was just a steady downpour, terrible conditions for offensive football. But that does mean that the running backs are going to get a lot of carries. So I would pencil in Elijah Mitchell for like a 20 for 70 kind of line. And you hope for a touchdown. Maybe not. Smooth Criminal Entertainment. Good morning. Start Gibson or Carter PPR? So Carter we're going to be watching here because going into the bye, he led the backfield for the Jets in touches. He scored a touchdown in each of those 2 games. However, it's the Jets. It's also the Patriots defense. Now, that being said, first time out, Patriots sacked Zach Wilson 4 times, picked him off 4 times, but the running game was actually reasonably efficient for the Jets. How are they going to improve? You can watch this. You get a do-over. This is the first test for the Robert Saleh, Michael LaFleur regime. Okay, you get a do-over. The Patriots really humbled you the first time out. Now, Gibson, as we talked about, could be marginalized a little bit because of the game script there. I would probably go with Carter because of that, because I just don't see a big game for Gibson. We know Gibson's coming in compromised with that shin issue, but it's not clear. Patrick Sweeney, by the way, pulls in that Seattle weather is going to be windy, steady rain. So again, that might make you want to break ties against Jameis Winston, Marquez Callaway, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. I can't imagine putting Metcalf on the bench. You'd have to have a pretty great wide receiver group to have him on the bench this week. Lockett's a little bit tougher because he hasn't been doing very much. Henry Ortiz, Jacoby Myers, or A.J. Dillon. 0.5 PPR. And 0.5 PPR takes some of the edge off of Jacoby Myers' upside and makes Dillon more attractive. I'm liking Dillon in this one. Miguel Orozco's a starter. Sit Ayuk, man, he's low on the list. He was marginalized in the passing game as it was, and now it's going to be a really, really bad weather game. Phil Spill says sit or start McLaurin. You got to play McLaurin. It could be even just in garbage time that McLaurin has a big game. Dan King, am I overthinking this? Good morning, Dan King. Gibson or Dillon? I think that's Dillon. Again, what are we looking at here with Gibson? Maybe if Washington was playing like Detroit, painful playoff rematch, if I'm talking about Lions fans there, one of the last high watermarks for this franchise. Anyway, sorry. I just think that unless Gibson's getting short touchdowns, I'm not sure what his value is right now. Coming out of the bye, we might feel differently. I'm going with Dillon over Antonio Gibson in this one. Let's see. I'm going to try to find some other players. Lunch table legend, aren't we all? Jameis or Tua or Darnold? That's Tua. And with Darnold, Carolina's playing the Giants. Giants defense isn't that great, but I'm just not convinced that Darnold has a lot of fantasy value when he's not scoring on quarterback draws. Tua's playing Atlanta. Tua looked good in tune with the offense last week. Going to be a big Gesicki and Jalen Waddle game again. I'm going backwards, and I'm seeing now where Seattle, why the weather came up. All right, Turbo Squid, PPR, DJ Dallas, Trey Sermon, or Johnson. I'm wondering, he said Van Johnson. I'm assuming he means Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson's interesting because it's Detroit, and you never know. He could just pop off a big play and make your week on a big play. DJ Dallas is interesting because Collins is banged up. Penny is Penny. He might come out there for a play, and that's the end of his night. So, and Sermon, I'm not going near. If JaMychal Hasty's active, which is possible, he was designated a return from IR, then Sermon might not even be active tomorrow night. So, yeah, I'm probably going to go with Van Jefferson here and hope for the best. I won't talk you out of DJ Dallas. Rabinder Khurana asks about Kyle Pitts or Ricky Seals-Jones. Oh, man, don't know. That's Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, hopefully, folks, Kyle Pitts is going to be a kind of player that we don't get a lot of questions about going forward after this week against Miami. Solo Dolo, he's in big trouble. He wants to start one out of Tyson Williams, Travis Homer, Jarrett Patterson, and Samaje Perine. It's Tyson. You know, with Latavius Murray inactive, he's going to be active. And you hope that even if they split this backfield, like 9 carries for Freeman, 9 carries for Bell, 9 carries for Williams. Williams has so much more capability to do something with his. And he can do something in the passing game, too. So I'm going with Tyson Williams there in that one. Solo Dolo. Right. Super C Man, Bateman, or Waddle. I mean, I think very few questions I would say you put Waddle on the bench after they used him in the short passing game. Well, not as short passing game with Tua Tagovailoa, but he got used frequently, including in the red zone. DK or Terry McLaurin. It's Terry. Again, Geno Smith, not exactly revitalizing this offense. Weather possibilities. Jonas Whale. What's up, Jonas? J.D. McKissick or Gibson? J.D. McKissick. This is a J.D. McKissick game. If we think that they're going to be behind, and I think they're going to be behind in Lambeau in the second half, it's a J.D. McKissick game. David Lundy has a question. I can show you a good threshold here. Take a catch-22 quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo or Fields. That's Fields because, again, folks, torrential rains, wind. I mean, it could somehow change, but I don't think so. I think that we have a pretty steady weather forecast for tonight that's going to be miserable. And you hope that maybe Tampa jumps out to a lead on Chicago and they just let Justin Fields play. Waffles, what's up, man? Asks AJ Green or JD McKissick. I mean, I'm probably wearing the JD McKissick color glasses today. I see him. We saw when Gibson was on the sidelines in recent weeks that it was McKissick, not Jarrett Patterson, getting the work, especially if they're behind, especially if it's a PPR. McKissick could get you 6, 7, 8 catches right out of the gate. Brian Schumer asked a little later on if Shepard will play and should we trust him if he does. And he said Darius Slayton is more trustworthy than Shepard this week. All right. Moving right along. Adam Gibson asked Jimmy G or Tyler Johnson. And, you know, when I get a super flex question, I almost always say break ties in favor of the quarterback. But it's Jimmy Garoppolo, who's not exactly an inspiring fantasy quarterback anyway. I really see the potential for a Tyler Johnson blow-up game in this one in place of Antonio Brown. So this is one. So, you know, play your quarterbacks in super flex leagues unless they're playing in a bomb cyclone. All right. Anna Jimenez, what's up, Anna? Half PPR, Bateman or Tyler Lockett? I have to pause on that one because half PPR gives a little bit of an edge to Lockett in the sense that you want the long plays, you want the touchdowns. Bateman is more of a short intermediate target, but Bateman did get 6 targets last week. And he was coming back cold as a rookie who had missed a lot of time with an injury. So that tells me they like him. And then Lamar Jackson likes him, and Lamar Jackson's comfortable throwing to him. And we have this potential weather situation in Seattle anyway. I fall back on this one to something I think about during draft season in fantasy football, which is when you take a wide receiver, you take a tight end, you're really taking the quarterback to wide receiver or tight end combination. I want to get a piece of Lamar Jackson in my lineup here, and I'm going to go with good old Rashad Bateman, and good old in the sense that this is the second week we've had to consider him in fantasy football. Kyle Graves, Foster Moreau, or Amon-Ra St. Brown, tight end premium. If I know that Waller is out, and again, I'm behind in the chat room, so if people are trying to tell me, hey, they just declared Waller out, I haven't seen it. But if Waller is uncertain, it makes it hard to go with Moreau over St. Brown. Although if I knew Waller was out in a tight end premium, I would. Rocky Landry, pick 2, Lockett, Boyd, Moore. I'm assuming that's Elijah Moore because if it's DJ Moore, that's easy. And Alex Collins. Whew. And there's no clear answer here, okay? Elijah Moore just isn't getting the targets, even though I wouldn't be surprised if coming out of the bye, he's healthier, he's more integrated into the offense, and they're ready to use him against New England. I think New England would focus on Corey Davis. So Elijah Moore's an interesting one here. Alex Collins, at least is going to get 10 or 12 touches and a chance for a touchdown. He's probably one of them. And it comes down to Lockett, Boyd, or Moore. Lockett and Moore, you're hoping for the same kind of play. So Lockett's obviously more likely to get there. Boyd, with Boyd, what you need to want to play him is for him to do something on your bench that makes you regret sitting him. And with all 3 receivers healthy, I'm probably going to go with Lockett and Collins. So wait for tomorrow night and hope for the best. But again, Patrick Rasmussen reminds me as we're getting close to the end of the start-sit session. like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure you click that notification bell so you never miss a vid. So, folks, we appreciate that. Great turnout this morning. I'm going to answer a few more questions before we wind it up, but I do want to remind everybody that we love what we do here. We love spending time with you. If you just showing up and adding your positive energy is a great way to show support. If you want to do more than that, certainly if you're on the YouTube channel here, because this one doesn't become a podcast, this is time we get to spend together live. Like the video, comment on the video, share it, subscribe to the channel. We like seeing those numbers go up. It gives YouTube an impetus to serve up our videos to other folks who may not know about Football Guys. And that certainly helps us keep this thing going. So thank you, Patrick, for reminding me to do that. All right, I'm going to go. Michael Serwinski asked about comfort level with Howard with questionable tag. Uzoma over him an early game option. No, go with Howard. It's getting a piece of that Tampa offense. Howard had a really good week last week. All right, a couple more questions. This is an interesting one here. Oh, well, I missed it. Juan Manuel Rangel asks, drop Marlon Mack for a kicker or play without a kicker this week. And this gets to the heart of questions like take a 0 or hurt your roster. Now, does Marlon Mack dropping him really hurt your roster? Mack's a speculative hold because there are teams that have been interested in him. And as running back injuries pile up, if he does get traded before the deadline, which I think is coming up in about a week and a half, then he could get a better and better opportunity. He looks okay. But is he a player so good, so potentially valuable that I would take a 0 and risk losing this week? Which even if you're 6-0 this week, could still make the difference of whether you get a bye in your playoffs or your matchup and things like that. I would probably go ahead and just pick up a kicker, as Zari says. Great to see you, Zari, by the way. Miguel Orozco asks, Jimmy, Zach Wilson, Goff, or Geno? Jared Goff against the Rams, I guess, assuming they're not doing some sort of, code red initiation because they're so unhappy with him. I think there's probably some decent feelings there. Wilson, we just saw, was miserable against New England the first time out. Geno against the Saints defense, well-rested. Jimmy playing in the monsoon. Whew. That question is a good indication of where things are in fantasy leagues with the week 7 bye apocalypse. Folks, it's humbling and wonderful to get to spend this time with you almost every day during the football season. Certainly, it makes me feel good to know that so many people in some way, even a remote way, are part of my life, and I get to be part of your life. And, my energy, my vibration, literal vibration of my vocal cords is something that you make room for, and it powers me, powers us as we go through the season. Hopefully we can help each other along the way, or at least share the experience, share the ride. I do want to mention, a heavy heart, but I think something that absolutely is worth mentioning. Those of you who know about Chris Wessling, we've lost too many people. One is too many in our fantasy football world. But Lakeisha, his loving wife, made a video, a film really about him. So if it's Lakeisha Jackson is actually her Twitter, but she's made a story, the story of Chris Wessling. And if you don't know anything about Chris, then check it out, because he's like an immortal in our circles, and an OG football guy, by the way. If you were back on the Shark Pool like 15 years ago, you know Chris. My brain is like losing the account. Name of the account. I think it was always with Rodney Dangerfield. I'm too focused on week 7 start sits. Anyway, the point is, he's been around for a long time in our circles, and he'll always be in our hearts. And Lakeisha did a tremendous job. So much love we have for Chris and Lakeisha and Lincoln and our community, as that's really what it's about, folks, is us being there to support each other. And I'm continually impressed with the fantasy football community and the positive place that we've created. So all of you own part of that, and let's continue to do that, because we really gather here because we like each other and we like spending time together. And that's really what this is about. Hopefully maybe we can steal a win this week too with some plays like Tyler Johnson. Maybe you have Foster Moreau, JD McKissick, and some of our other favorites. And hopefully we get a wonderful, enjoyable day of football together, folks. Cecil and I will be back with the recap of week 7 tonight. And then we started it all over again. Get our waiver wire show on Tuesday. We love the calendar as it propels us through time, through our lives, together always, because you're so classy.